Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Great to see you. We've got some incredible announcements here today. I'm so proud. First of all, proud to be here. This is an extraordinary institution. I want to thank the Executive Director, Education Trust New York, Gillibrand, who you're going to hear from, but Sharon Greenberger, what you do with the Ys, YMCA, YWCAs, is extraordinary. And I used to participate in YWCA training for candidates. A long time ago, I became very involved in the community. But what you do for children across this city and this state is extraordinary. I want to thank you for hosting us here today. And also, we'll be hearing from Gillibrand in a couple of minutes. Sheila Poole, the Commissioner of the Office of Children and Family Services, is here. There she is right at the end. I want to thank her for what she does. Also, I am blessed to have great partners also in Washington, and none other than Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who's joined us here today. Let's give her a huge round of applause. You know, back when I was lieutenant governor, I used to go around the state with Kirsten Gillibrand, putting a spotlight on the needs of families and working parents, primarily working moms, and how there were so many child care deserts all over the state. So even before the pandemic, the two of us were committed to seeing what we could do at the federal level, teaming up with the state. And so I just want to applaud her for all she has done as a champion and advocate for stressed out moms, something we both know a little bit about with our experiences, but also how you fight for us, using your voice for the people of our state, especially the most vulnerable, every single day in Washington, D.C. So let's give her another round of applause. So we've been on this journey together. This is not a new event for us. It's something we've been talking about and working on for years. And so all it is about proving access to quality child care across the state of New York. So I'm going to talk in a couple minutes about some of the steps that we've taken to accomplish this, but I want to thank her specifically, and our Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and President Biden and all our leaders in Washington teaming up to allow states like New York to secure billions and billions of dollars in federal assistance so we can meet the needs of our families with respect to child care. So before we get into that, you know, I see the senator. I'm reminded it was a number of years ago when I was a staffer for a senator, probably in the same office you're in, Senator Moynihan's office. Young mom, had my career ahead of me, all excited, and we were blessed with my son, our son, and all of a sudden realized, like, well, who's going to watch the baby when I go back to work? No family support. They all lived back home in New York, and realized back then that I'd have to sacrifice the income, my ambition, and just try to figure it all out on my own, because it was not that sense of any responsibility to individual families. This was your problem. You figure it out. And I've always thought that at this age now, when that son is now a father of a 4-month-old today, that things would get better. And they are getting better. At least there's an acknowledgement. There's a sense of responsibility from government to help lift the burden on families, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because women in the workforce are part of an economic engine that we can no longer have suppressed, because that's what's been happening. So I was able to get back to work eventually. Obviously, I'm working right now. But too many parents and moms aren't as lucky as I was, to get back on the path. And the presumption always was, as I said, this is your problem, you deal with it. But how can we overlook the fact that this has a profound impact on our economy when we have to deal with people out of the workforce who want to be in the workforce? So here's the challenge. I mean, it's a well-known phenomenon that we have a child care crisis. There's just not enough child care slots in the first place. And secondly, if they do exist, they're just too expensive. They're out of reach for everyday New Yorkers. So the dual crisis of availability and affordability is something we talked about. But this is all before the pandemic. It was bad before the pandemic. And all of a sudden, the sky fell in. And I wrote an op-ed literally 2 weeks after the pandemic and spoke about who's being hardest hit during the pandemic. Well, it was the moms, the working women who many of them had jobs or they couldn't zoom into life. They still had to go out and help take care of sick people in hospitals or work at the stores and help get the groceries out to people. I mean, they had so much stress. But who's watching their kids? Because guess what? The schools are shut down. The The child care centers are shut down. So what a toxic brew here, and put all that weight primarily on moms, and many of them were single moms. So we had a real crisis. And as I mentioned, we had this beforehand. At the time, you compare us to other nations. The average other rich countries would spend about $14,000 a year on helping families. Here in the U.S., it's about $500, no comparison. And many New Yorkers were already spending 40% of their income on child care. But then everything just imploded. And it was really hardest hit in Black and brown communities because these are more likely to be the frontline workers, unfortunately the lower wage jobs, and their support system collapsed as well when the child care centers had to shut down. So it's devastating. It took people off the track they're on and eliminated their wages, their earning potential for years to come, and it also had a devastating impact on our children. We're still reeling with the effects of what it was for children to be taken out of their normal environment, security of being in an environment where teachers understand them, there's other classmates, the comfort that they had that was denied them all that time of trying to learn at home. We're still dealing with the fallout. But New York State lost over 2,000 child care programs. And I'm not talking about slots, I'm talking about programs. And over 20,000 child care slots that were there before the pandemic when things were still really tight, those are gone now as well. And nationally, there's over 1 million fewer women working all across the country than there were in February of 2020, direct impact of the pandemic. So last week on Women's Equality Day, I directed the Department of Labor to study the pandemic's impact on women, particularly in communities of color, and talk about solutions and ideas. And that's going to take a little while, but I still want to get my arms around it. We can't ignore the fact that this phenomenon happened, and that'll be out by this time next year. But I'm not waiting. I don't need numbers to tell me we've got a real problem. And so we're making sure that New Yorkers, New York families, are not left out in the cold any longer. In my very first budget as your governor, we secured an historic $7 billion to address child care. $7 billion. And that was almost $16 million went to expand child care. Where? At SUNY and CUNY campuses, because if we want people to better themselves and get those higher wage jobs, they need that credential, they need that certificate, or they need that actual degree. How do they get that when they've got little kids tagging behind them? So now we say, you come, better yourself, we'll help take care of your kids, so ultimately you can take care of your family and you'll be part of our family and being very productive working. So that's why we're focusing on those. Also, we've got a lot of children who are the children of farm workers. Not so many in this neighborhood, I'm going to guess, but the senator was just at the state fair yesterday. I was there last week. There's a very rural part of our state. There's a lot of poverty, but especially for those farm workers who come, who's taking care of them? So we put over almost $14 million into those centers where we can provide child care services to farm workers' families. $50 million for a child care capital program because we have to build new buildings. The design, the construction, the furnishing, all these equipment expenses. And last month we announced the second tranche of grants to go to new and existing child care providers operating basically in the child care deserts. So areas of our state that have been identified that do not meet the needs of the communities. So thus far we've allocated over $100 million of the funding to create nearly 12,000 new child care slots in child care deserts. So that's what we've already done. But now we're investing $2 billion into subsidies. What does a subsidy do? Well, it says to the family, you're not on your own. This does not all have to come out of your pocket because it just doesn't add up. You're earning minimum wage and you're spending up to $27,000 a year for a preschooler and an infant. Okay, do the math. That does not work at all. So now we have subsidies which will benefit, be to the tune of over $9,000 per child, $9,000 per child. We also broaden the eligibility. It used to be that families earning up to $55,000 for a family of 4 were eligible for subsidies. We're doing our budget, and I'm thinking, I'm trying to make the statewide budget add up. How does a family sitting at their dinner table make this add up? So I said, let's go higher, let's go big. Now the number is $83,000 a year per family. Up to that, you can secure. We went up to 300% of the poverty level instead of some of the earlier proposals that I just did not think were bold enough. So we made all these changes, and also the reason we could do that, again, Senator Gillibrand. She made sure, constantly communicating with us, what do you need, how much do you need it, because I'm going to get this done for you. And I'm so grateful to have her because of her efforts, working collaboratively. We now have the ability to expand access to over 400,000 New York children. That's half of New York children are now eligible for these expanded services. But what I'm announcing today is like people need to know about this. What is shocking to me right now is that only 12% of families eligible for child care assistance are taking advantage of it. They don't know about it. And here we are adding even more, making it easier on them, but if they don't know about it, it doesn't matter. It hasn't helped them. They're still struggling out there. So we're launching a multimedia marketing campaign for the next few months to let families know what's available for them. We're going to target social media, radio ad, digital, highway billboards, bus posters, go into nail salons, barber shops, wherever anybody wants to hang out, take a sign, we'll get the information out there, and especially targeting Hispanic and African American communities. Let's just get the information into the communities so they understand very simply how to make sure that they can secure this assistance. So we're doing that starting very shortly, but also today I'm announcing that we're accepting our second round of child care provider stabilization grants. That's open to school-aged child care providers, and over 900, this is a big number, 900 new child care providers that have been licensed just since January. I said speed it up, get them out the door, 900 new providers. So that'll be paid for with $343 million in federal money. Thank you again, Senator Gillibrand. So we're also providing assistance to the workforce. Okay? When you think about child care providers, the people go in every day and basically parent our children for us in our behalf. They're also the first teachers. I told them we were going around during the pandemic, I said, at the time, you were the essential workers for the essential workers. So now we have to bolster them up. A lot of people left the workplace. They have their own families to take care of, a lot of stress on them. So now we want to make sure that those individuals are getting assistance. So we're going to have 75% of grants go directly to workforce supports, wage increases, overdue wage increases, bonuses, tuition reimbursement, and help them with their health care and retirement contributions. So that's how we help the ecosystem thrive. You help bring more workers in, you support those workers, you get them on their jobs, you open more facilities, you give the construction grants, and then you take care of families and make more of them eligible. That's how we lift families up in the state of New York, by investing in their ability to take care of their families during this short time when they need it, because we cannot afford to lose them in the workplace, but it's also just the right thing to do. So I'm proud of these efforts. As long as I'm governor, I will not stop fighting every single day for New York families, and especially our children, to give them the very best start in life. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with incredible partners like Senator Gillibrand, and I think we're officially declaring that powder blue is the color of fighting for child care. Senator Gillibrand.
Well, it does help to have a governor who's a mom, because these issues are near and dear to her heart. She's struggled through it herself as a young mother. She knows the stress and strain. She knows the tough decisions that have to be made. And that's why it's something that we both feel so strongly about. My boys are growing. One is now 14, the other one's now 18. I was on the phone in the car, walking in here, trying to get the 18-year-old to order sheets for his college dorm. So it doesn't end, and it's a joy. So thank you to our governor, who's just brilliant and so thoughtful and cares deeply about the constituents that she represents so well. And I want to thank her for her leadership and her vision and her tenacity to never, ever, ever give up. And that's why this good policy is coming to fruition. I want to thank Dia Bryant, our Executive Director of Education Trust New York. Thank you for your leadership and your vision and your hard work. It's wonderful for Kathy and I to have partners like you who are on the ground actually implementing the programs that we're trying to pass into law, so thank you for that. I want to thank all the other advocates who are in the room. I appreciate all the work you do every day to help our families thrive. I want to thank the YMCA for the amazing programs and childcare that you offer here, which is wonderful, and you are one of the groups that will be eligible to apply for this money, so it's very important that we're doing here. The bottom line is our children are our nation's future, and when we invest in them, we invest in our country, in our values, and in the strength of our future together. While we certainly can't control how our children choose to lead their lives, we can certainly nourish them, we can educate them, we can guide them towards a path to success, to launch them into the world. I'm still one of the few moms in the Senate with school-age children, but I'm constantly reminded how vastly important it is to make sure our nation's children are cared for and given the advantages that they need to live a successful and healthy life. As the governor said, about 22% of Americans are under the age of 18, and about 1/4 of those kids are under the age of 5. So we have a huge child care need in this country, and many of them do not have the support that they need to be able to succeed. And with COVID, also as the governor said, things became exponentially harder and much more strain on our state. Before the pandemic, there was one slot for every four kids that were looking for child care slots. Post-pandemic was one slot for every 8 kids. So you can see how significant the need is around our state. The reason why I worked so hard on these funds in the American Rescue Plan and the CARES Act is because I knew our governor would spend the money to actually improve care and to expand care, and that's exactly what today's announcement's about. These funds make 2 crucial initiatives possible. One, a second round of child care stabilization grants for providers. This is direct money to the providers so they can stay in business, so they can offer more slots, offer more jobs to more teachers, to early childhood educators. It allows them to expand facilities. It allows them to do whatever they need to get their child care center up and running. And the second is, as the governor said, a PSA campaign to just tell families that this is available to them. Most people are busy. They don't have time to watch the news. They certainly don't have time to research grants online through the governor's website. I mean, that's time-consuming and challenging, and they don't even know that they can look. So this is going to make a difference. It's going to go right into the families, into the feeds, and into the internet of anybody who might be eligible. So it'll work. The New York State, with this funding, will be able to provide $343 million of stabilization grants, which is a great deal of money. And they can be used to address a broad array of workforce needs, from recruitment and retention, wage support, improved health and retirement benefits, and mental health support for our staff. And you know, post-COVID, how extreme the mental health needs are in our communities all across the state. It's one of the biggest burdens that families and communities are facing because there's increased anxiety. For a lot of kids, increased fear. Imagine what it's like for a toddler to have to wear a mask for 2.5 years. Imagine now taking that mask off. Are they afraid? Do they think they're going to get sick? There's a lot of mental health challenges, and also for the workforce, and so that money will help as well. And last, the PSA campaign will be able to go everywhere that it's needed to go to get the message out. Also, as the governor said, throughout my time in the Senate, access to child care, access to early childhood education, and access to paid leave have been 3 of my biggest priorities. And she said it perfectly because it's about the economy. If half your workforce cannot be working at their fullest potential, then you don't have the growing economy that you could have. And this is the kind of investment that government should make. In the same way we build roads and bridges, we have water systems, we have electric systems, we provide internet so that people can go to work, they can go to school, they can be part and functioning of the economy. Well, part of that infrastructure should also be childcare, Because if 50% of our workforce during some of their childbearing years will not be able to be fully employed because of care needs, both for young children and for older adults and aging parents, then they're not able to go to the workforce. They're not able to be able to earning at their full potential. And so it's the same kind of investment we should be making as we invest in roads and bridges and subways. It's the same. And it takes an enlightened leader to know that. Because before this, just as the governor said, it was your problem as a parent to figure it out. And if we want the best economy and we want to be competitive with the rest of the globe, we are literally the only industrialized country in the world without universal pre-K, universal kindergarten, and paid leave. We just do not invest in these things in the same way our peers do. So now it's time. We have a governor who wants to do it. We've got a senator and a Senate Majority Leader who wants to do it. And we have a president who will sign it into law. So thank you very much.
Please welcome to the podium, Gillibrand.
Good morning. Thank you to Governor Hochul, Senator Gillibrand, to Sherry for your leadership at the YMCA, and to Commissioner Poole for your leadership with the Office of Children and Family Services. I appreciate the opportunity to be before you today and celebrate such an important occasion. I am Dia Bryant. I lead the Education Trust New York. We are a statewide education, policy, and advocacy organization that focuses on equity and closing opportunity gaps that leave far too many children behind. The Education Trust coordinates Raising New York. It is a coalition of parents, early childhood, business, and health organizations that are dedicated to advocating for policies that improve equitable outcomes for infants and toddlers, their families, and the professionals who care for them every day. On behalf of the Education Trust and our coalition partners, I am proud to stand here today and celebrate the recent investments that make high-quality childcare more accessible and more affordable for families of our youngest New Yorkers. The past 2 years have taught us all about the vital role that childcare providers play in our state's economy. And that is especially true as more parents return to work and New York continues its economic recovery. We know that women, and especially women of color in particular, are disproportionately impacted by the lack of childcare and have not returned to pre-pandemic levels in the workforce. Without question, current research has made it clear that increasing the availability of high-quality childcare will return women to work. The historic levels of federal funding in the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act and the American Rescue Plan Act, combined with the state's Child Care Stabilization Grant work, enabled New Yorkers to award millions of dollars to child care providers in an effort to keep programs open during the early years of the pandemic. Over the past 2 years, the New York State Office of Children and Family Services distributed more than $1 billion from these funding streams combined. I think that's something to celebrate. The infusion of these relief dollars has been critical to the survival of childcare providers, many of whom were already struggling before the pandemic. And the pandemic exacerbated the conditions, as many have shared already. As our state leaders take critical steps to make childcare more affordable for everyday New Yorkers, families, I hope, will learn about new income eligibility and follow with historic enrollment in childcare subsidies, across the state, particularly in communities of color, under-resourced communities, and others who have felt the impact of the pandemic most deeply. A recent report by Raising New York showed that improvements taken on by the leadership here have provided better access and more ease for providers when completing application for funding. Their efforts have helped lead to increased funding distribution, particularly for home-based care providers who are largely owned and operated by women of color and are more likely to face complications with finances. Placing stabilization funding directly into the hands of providers helps to mitigate debt and helps to cover rent payments, mortgage payments, teaching materials, and cleaning supplies that many may need. As the applications open for school-age programs and new providers, I'm looking forward to how much more impact we can make. We and our coalition members look forward to continuing to work alongside Governor Hochul, Senator Gillibrand, and their teams, and many other committed stakeholders to ensure that we have a clear picture on how these significant investments are impacting our youngest New Yorkers. We hope to continue to disrupt systemic racism and poverty through investments like this. Child care providers play a vital role in our state's economy, and that is especially true as many more parents continue to think about getting back to work. New relief dollars will be essential to returning New York's providers to helping New York's providers keep their doors open and continue to serve New York's youngest. Today, I am thrilled that New York is taking yet another step in the right direction. We look forward to seeing how our state and federal funding will continue to support the early childhood sector. And for me, there's a future where every child has high-quality care, where we eliminate deserts, we have a well-compensated workforce, and parents can work in the jobs that they desire. Thank you.
Thank you for attending today's event. For those joining us here in